Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to Wrestling Chat with Friends.
Meow, meow, meow,
In,
meow.
in honor of Megan, our favorite heel in heels, who is not here today. She's experiencing some some technical difficulties due to a very heavy storm that swept up our residence in Virginia. So hopefully she'll be able to join us later. But shout out to our favorite heels joining us. Joining us is always Elliot the Collector. Elliot, how you feeling?
Hey, yo, I'm here. I'm present. I'm accounted for. I feel good. My collector's choice this week is the only thing it could be. The biggest thing that's
Another
happening in
week.
wrestling right now. Yeah,
Another week.
I'm bringing it back. I had the Eddie Kingston figure last night to go with this, but considering what's going on in the world right now, this is really all that matters. So I'm here. I feel good. Let's get it on.
I love it. I love it. And also joining us, the Ultimate Warrior, TG. TG, how you feel?
I feel good. A lot to discuss this week. A lot to
A lot
discuss.
to discuss in the world of wrestling, and I fluffed the lead there in the sense that I am filling in for Megan, but I am your host today, right now. Cheats two belts,
Two belts.
and I am excited to talk about what is happening in the world of professional wrestling. Let's kick it off with how we always kick off the show. Elliot, what are you popping for this week?
Two things. I'm not going to talk about what I was really popping for this week, which is what we were all popping for this week, because we'll cover that in the A block. But I am popping this week for here's one. Currently, there is a Bullet Club storyline or quasi storyline in AEW, in WWE, in New Japan, and in Impact Wrestling. And I think that's pretty cool. Not sure that's ever happened with another faction before in the history of wrestling, where four different promotions all have something kind of semi-consistently going on with one group. But it's happening right now, down to Finn and AJ and Liv sort of to sweeten themselves a lot. Those are two of the and WWE has currently three of the leaders of the Bullet Club, with Finn and AJ and Cody. There is, of course, New Japan, where Bullet Club kind of resides. The Good Brothers are still making waves in Impact Wrestling, and AEW with Forbidden Door and some of their talent, Red Dragon, Adam Cole coming in, the Bucks. There is, just the fabric of the Bullet Club really is all through wrestling at the moment. That's what I'm popping for. That's one of the things. Second, just sort of apropos of nothing, I had a very pleasant, short, but genial back and forth today via Twitter DM with Conrad Thompson, the Podfather.
That's right.
And he was, for as busy a guy as he is, he replied within 5 minutes, and we had a quick back and forth. Very cool experience. I talked to Ric Flair's son-in-law today. Not bad. So shout out to Conrad. That is my pops this week. What about you?
That is not bad at all. Not bad. Shout out to Conrad. Like you said, would you call him the Podfather of professional wrestling?
Mm-hmm. He's got currently 16 podcasts right now, so we can only aspire to do what he's doing right now.
We can only aspire. That's awesome.
Big shout
out. TG, what are you popping for this week?
Yeah, I think the real answer is probably the real answer that Elliot alluded to earlier, which I'm going to skip. But the other thing that I'm popping for this week is, as you all know, I have been pretty critical of Cody's character.
Oh no!
To WWE.
Critical of Cody Rhodes. You've been critical. Yes. The last 2 weeks.
And I still don't like the content of his promos, but okay. I thought he and Seth Rollins had a really, really good segment this week on Raw that actually made me kind of interested in to see what happens at the pay-per-view. A pay-per-view that really is, for WWE, is kind of I don't want to say a filler, but it certainly is sort of a pay-per-view to get to more consequential pay-per-views later this year. So that got me
talking about Hell in the Cell, right?
Hell in a Cell, yep, this Sunday.
Can I ask, because I like where you're going with this, but Hell in the Cell was never a filler pay-per-view, right? And the Hell in the Cell used to be a big deal.
When it used to be just a match type,
right?
It was always a big deal because they would only bring it out occasionally, and it was always the culmination of a major feud or major storyline. And in addition to that, more often than not, something would happen during the match that not only, maybe ended one feud, but also led to bigger things down the road or set the stage for the next stuff.
Right.
Since it has become a pay-per-view, I think it has been, I don't want to say diluted, but certainly it's not, it went from being this device they would use as a big blow-off match to something that was more of it's like we have this pay-per-view that really isn't certainly not one of the big four, obviously. So let's just always put at least one of those matches on this card, and sort of by that structure will make it more important. It's kind of hit or miss. I mean, Money in the Bank, which is coming up later this summer,
Sure.
and SummerSlam are much more consequential in terms of where they're going to go creatively.
And I feel like WWE, you just mentioned Money in the Bank. I feel like WWE does this a lot, right? Where they have like something that's really special, then they try to change it into like a whole pay-per-view. Yeah. And then what they do is they don't put so Survival Series is the one I always think about. There's like no Survival Series matches on Survival Series anymore. Right. Money in the Bank was a great match. Now it's a whole pay-per-view, but there's not really all of it's not Money in the Bank matches, right?
Some of these things, like Money in the Survivor Series, and I think Hell in a Cell, they are sort of somewhat remnants of a bygone era when you had the Undertaker and Kane, and had some of these larger than life, darker characters that gave it a little more gravitas. Everyone kind of knows some of these. It's famous for the Mick Foley spot. Sure. I feel like these were originally used for the biggest names and the biggest feuds, and they've kept it going because it is an attractive type of match, and they did turn it into a pay-per-view. But to Tom's point, probably has been diluted a little over the years. I still love it, but I love it sort of it's gotten, there were those years where it got weird when The Fiend was in it, and they had him and Seth Rollins had some unremarkable Hell in the Cells. They turned the structure red now, I guess, but
for The Fiend,
WWE, they're always reinventing themselves.
And go ahead. I was going to say, I also think of TLC, like Tables, Ladders, and Chairs was a heck of a match. It turned into a pay-per-view that was like, what are we doing here?
All of that stuff that we're talking about is really a byproduct of the same thing, which was WWE made a business decision many years ago to say, like, look, if we do, I mean, I think at one point after the brand split, they were doing, I believe, as many as 18 pay-per-views a year, because they would have these numbers are going to be wrong.
I thought it was a little fewer, but more than 12.
Well, but the reason was because they had several pay-per-views that were single branded, and then they got away from that. But yeah, I think most recently, I think now they do between 14 and 16, I want to say, because and I'm talking about, all premium live events. So you throw in Crown Jewel and Day One and those things. So they made a decision, the point being that they want to do more than one pay-per-view a month over the course of a year. And at a certain point, they were just like, we can just make up all these crazy names for stuff, but why don't we just build pay-per-views around specific gimmick matches? And that's a much easier, it's a shortcut. Sure. I mean, and I think that was why they did it, was just because it's well, at least we'll have a theme, and we don't have to come up with some crazy Great Balls of Fire or Stomping Grounds or all that stuff. So
that's crazy. Well, no, that's a good point. In regards to what I'm popping for this, again, we're not going to bury the lead. We're going to talk about all the stuff that we're going to talk about with MJF and Double or Nothing immediately after this. So I will pick something different. And I was excited about the arrivals and returns of AEW in the last, Double or Nothing. I'm a big Athena fan. I think she is, I don't know all the stuff that happens outside of the ring with her. I'm starting to hear more and read more that it's a bit of a show outside of her actual ring talent. I think her in-ring talent is undeniable. The stuff that she did in NXT and on the main roster at WWE under the name Amber Moon was amazing. when she comes out. I wanted her there. I wanted her there before Tony Storm or even Ruby Soho. I wanted Athena over at AEW, and I know she had some physical setbacks, a couple of them, and it really did delay her being, I think, her full self. And so seeing her come out at Double or Nothing along with Stokely Hathaway, who is we know really quickly as Malcolm Bevins of the Diamond Mine over at NXT. I think a really great heel,
tons of
mouthpiece
charisma,
personality. He was fantastic in NXT. I'm really surprised they got rid of him and or released him. And I think if he kind of becomes the publicist for Jade Cargill and Smart Mark goes and works with Tony Nese and those, I don't think you need all of them there, but Stokely with Jade would be hilarious because I think they're both actually really funny and entertaining. Excited to see Miro come back. I don't fully understand the whole Johnny Elite thing. It makes no sense to me. I don't even know why they signed him, but Miro coming back and stomping him out and looking pretty dominant was exciting for me. So I was excited to see that. So AEW's returns, I was really excited for. We'll get into Double or Nothing. We'll get into MJF because there's a lot of Double or Nothing that we'll talk about it because I don't know what they're doing with.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, I don't know what they're doing with Forbidden Door in the sense of like a build up. So, but that's what I'm popping for this week. So let's turn the page. Let's click it. Let's get right into it. Let me ask you this. Do you just want to start with MJF or do you want to do the Double or Nothing preview? Or should we just start with MJF?
Let's just start with MJF. Yeah. Let's get into it.
Right.
That's what we all have the strongest opinions on right now.
So MJF had an eventful.
Yeah, that's one way to put it.
Eventful. Today's Thursday, so let's say an eventful 5 days.
Yeah.
And it started with him no showing AEW Fan Fest, which is a big thing before Double or Nothing.
That's right.
And then him, I believe it was Sean Ross Sapp, is it?
Sean Ross Sapp.
Yes, I believe it was him.
Not a fan, but go ahead.
But I believe it was Sean. I think he does a pretty good job, honestly. I think he does a really good job. But I think it started with him and other sites that were on Twitter and active, dirt sheets, if you will, saying, hey, look, this MJF thing could be a thing. Contractually, he didn't show up to FanFest. Then there was like a weird tweet that's like, rumor is there's a plane ready to take him out of Vegas. He might have got on it. He didn't get on it. We didn't know. And everything was heavy speculation. AEW, I believe, took him down. Megan, I think, told us that they took him down off the promo. So they didn't even know, we didn't know what was happening.
Yep, that's
so true. MJF gets to Double or Nothing. A lot of speculation of whether he's upset about his contract. MJF's been very vocal, kayfabe about his contract. It's just a part of the storyline. And it gets to Double or Nothing. He is the first match. The music hits, incredible heat. He walks out. The chants from the AEW crowd is, he showed up. So it's just an amazing thing. However, the interesting thing is, which is another layer of this, he really doesn't work. Like, you're not going to get around Wardlow in the sense of MJF's talent, but Wardlow just destroys him, lays him out, cleans him clean, and then everybody's like, after that was like, oh, is this just like he showed up, but by him getting just like throttled and pinned clean, he wouldn't do this if he was in it for the long haul. Does this mean a whole nother layer of he's completely out of here? This was like his FU to everything. So then, obviously, we get to Dynamite this week on Wednesday night. He's the opening segment, and he gives what would be equivalent to what he would consider his CM Punk pipe bomb type, like breaks the wall, calling out Tony, saying all types of cuss words, calling him everything, and it's just like, basically, you don't appreciate me type thing, and then just walks off. And now, gentlemen, I don't know where you start, but that's the 5 days, right? Did I miss anything major in there? That's the 5 days of what's happened with MJF, and no one really knows at this point, how much of it is shoot, how much of it is kayfabe. I think we know since he showed up on Wednesday that he's going to be in AEW at least for a while. However, the other thing that I thought was really interesting was these dirt sheets are reporting numbers of a contract that is basically less than what NXT superstars make.
Right.
So
and this, just one more piece.
Go ahead.
One more piece of context that sort of is the precursor to all this stuff that happened. So when AEW starts, you had all these guys who they wanted, who came in and signed these multi-year contracts. Now, of course, at the point when AEW begins, they knew they had a TV deal, but beyond that, they didn't know how financially successful they were going to be or whatever. So they had to be careful, except with the exception of Chris Jericho and a couple other known quantities, the EVPs. Most of the people who came in, it was sort of a I don't want to say a risk, but the idea was they knew the deal going in was this is the plan. We hope to be successful. But you knew that if you're signing with AEW 4 years ago, that you're not going to get a huge deal. Well, things go well. They exceed expectations. They get a revised TV deal that increases the amount of money that they have on hand. Tony Khan, as MJF talked about, starts signing all these WWE guys. And basically, he has this contract that is not commensurate with what he draws in terms of interest to the program, ratings, etc. And B, is not even in the same league as other guys who have no affiliation prior to this, to being signed by AEW, who have not, sort of built AEW and are being brought in at a financial level that's much higher than his. So he has clearly a legitimate, sort of argument here. I'll shut up in a second.
No, keep going.
Love to hear Elliot's thoughts. But my thought on all of this is basically comes down to two things. The first is, in terms of how this went down, I think it was absolutely, a legit contract dispute. They worked something out to get through Sunday night. I don't think they had really resolved everything, because if they had put the plan in place that got him back on Dynamite this week on Sunday, it wouldn't have been the first match, and it wouldn't have been a burial. That was a burial. I mean, they buried him thinking like, we don't know where this is going to go.
Right.
Between Sunday and probably Tuesday, I think that they sat down, they came to some kind of agreement. And part of the agreement was Tony Khan said to MJF, like, look, as long as you can say whatever you want, except for something that like could legally get us into trouble. So like, you can't say I've been talking. You can mention WWE, which he did, which is a big deal.
Significant.
You can't say I've been talking to WWE, because then you get into contract stuff. And so anything short of that, I think it was like, you can say whatever you want. Now we'll pretend like it makes us upset, and we'll send Punk out there, and but all of that is obviously work. Final thought. This is the other piece of it. I didn't get a chance to read the article you sent today, Mark, but I'll be interested to read it. The thing that I think is dangerous with this, it's not so much even the part where you're playing with fire because MJF really does want to leave in 24. That's part of it. But for me, it's like when CM Punk did this, he was at a point where he was not only ready to be the number one guy in the company, but also there was this thing he could play off of, which was the goody-goody John Cena face plus Vince McMahon as this established heel character. Tony Khan is not an on-screen presence other than to come out and make an announcement about, hey, we've made a partnership with New Japan or whatever. He's also, to the extent he has been on screen, he's definitely not a heel. So you're taking the guy who's the best heel in your company, maybe the best heel, we can argue about Roman Reigns, but maybe the best heel in the world in terms of like a classical style heel. And you were de facto turning him at best to a tweener, maybe to a face. And what I would be worried about if I were working there, I'd be like, are we going to, not be able to, no pun intended, max him out And B, are we going to screw ourselves storyline wise? Because everything he's done storyline wise for the last 3 years has been awesome, because he is such a heel and you can pair him with all different kinds of people. And it's a formula, but it's a great formula that really works. You've broken that formula now. And I'm not saying it's not going to work. I'm saying it's less clear to me how you use him than it was a week ago, a month ago, a year ago. And now I'll shut up. Elliot, all yours.
No, this is a good point.
Wow, that was great. I hope I can keep up with some of that. Let me just get some rapid fire thoughts, as now that everything, Tom, you've added hasn't changed any perspective, but has made me just think about a lot of things. I think I said this kind of when it happened. This is like the CM Punk pipe bomb moment. That's, I think, a response it wanted to elicit from people. I said, I don't think it was the CM Punk pipe bomb. The rawness, the vulgarity. He didn't just call out TK. He called out the boys in the back. He called out he was vicious with the fans. Everybody. This was, I think, Punk's podcast with Colt Cabana live on TV in front of 16,000 people. Even more raw. I almost felt, and here's this. Everything you just said, Tom, Cheats, we don't know what the shoot work percentage is. We all have our thoughts, and that's at the end, it's what makes pro wrestling great. When you blur the lines between reality. Cheats, you said something, I think, in a group chat earlier, maybe it was on Sunday night, we all got worked. That's a great thing. That's a great thing when that happens. I have no problem. I'm not a mark to the extent of like, I get disappointed if they don't end up doing what I think in my mind they should. No, it's perfect. I still don't know. None of us still know. If you look the MGF character, I didn't think it. I thought it got enough. He was getting enough credit for how good he was. He's not. He's underrated. He's certainly undercompensated. But again, we don't even know any terms of the contracts other than what dirt sheets report. And I think Sean Ross Sapp does a good job. I think, and I've been interacting with him on and off for like a dozen years when he first started on another site. I think his ego now has eclipsed his talent by a little bit, but he does a good job. He is just extremely sensitive. This is the best storyline going right now. It's out of nowhere. It's still fluid. It was fantastic. He is so talented. And the fact that if you go on YouTube, you can't find a clip of MJF out of character. At cons, he's done a couple of like the local news interviews when they're in town. He's in character for that. His character is someone who's acting out of character, yet being his character. He's that good. He is Roddy Piper, in 2022. And that's among the best heels you'll ever see. I am very curious, leery, worried about what's going to happen, because I'm starting to have even more and more concerns about Tony and who's in his ear, who's helping him write these. I do not want him to become an on-screen character. I hope he resists doing that, because that would then feel like a Punk or a Stone Cold storyline. Sure. And he can be better not doing that.
It's not his skill set. He's
not at all.
He's awful when he does that stuff.
Right. So I think it was as good as the pipe bomb. And I think I don't know where it's going to go week to week. I hope he doesn't come out and cut that promo every Wednesday for a while until some next, Eddie Kingston comes out and says, I want to fight you to shut you up. We have no idea, and that is what makes the storyline
It is. I think that's my fear now. My fear is this goes on and it gets weirder, and Tony Khan probably does have to do something, and he comes out every week and just like berates things. That'll be. That's my fear, but I think that's it's a very good possibility that happens. My concern overall with the big picture story, and there was a really good article that we shared in our group chat about Brian Pillman back in the day, and apparently Brian Pillman and Eric Bischoff worked up such an elaborate kayfabe / shoot mar the reality that Pillman actually convinced Bischoff to release him in real life. This is what the article was. And all of it backfired. The whole thing backfired in a awful calamity. And one of the things I'm interested in is if MJF, who is incredible, he's an incredible heel, and I do think he is the top pure heel in wrestling today. Because Roman's a heel, but Roman's about the most lovable heel you can get at this point.
Roman is awesome. That's the thing. And MJF, to Elliot's point, there is nobody, at least, granted, I don't follow the indies like you guys do, so I'm accepting that. But in terms of AEW, WWE, there is no performer who is more committed. That's the word I would use to describe him. Right. He is so old school. Like, this is like you see the documentaries now about like the Undertaker's career, or listen to his Hall of Fame speech and stuff. And it's like, oh yeah, I lived that gimmick because that's A, it was a really heavy gimmick, but B, that's how it was in the early 90s.
Yeah,
that's what you did.
You get a good point, because Roman will be on ESPN talking to a SportsCenter anchor and talking about his Georgia Tech football days, and he's like a normal human being. He did that right before WrestleMania.
Right. If MJF came on Inside the NBA, he'd be cutting a great heel promo, as he'd tell Barkley and Shaq they were fat and I hate you.
Correct. And my thing, real quick, is one of the criticisms that I have about WWE, even though I like WWE, is that right there. I'm like, when they have like a promo segment with a heel, and then like 2 commercial breaks later, you're seeing that same heel at interact with kids in like a Make-A-Wish.
Right. Make-A-Wish, yep.
I know kayfabe is dead, especially in WWE, but can we just at least on the show, like during those 3 hours, like have the pretense of kayfabe? Come on, guys.
And MJF is great at it. Here's my fear. My fear, not to the extent that the Pillman article went to, but my fear is that he works this up so much, and he's like my thing is, if he does this the way that he's doing it, he better have a WWE contract in 2024, 25. Like, my thing is, he's going to say their names, do this, say, I'm going to walk and so forth. And then the powers that be over there, WWE, are going to be like, nah.
I want to reiterate.
You're just like left, right?
I want to reiterate.
If WWE says no?
Here, that's why right now, it kind of doesn't matter. And this is why I say that. As we've said, we've only seen MJF in total heel character. We've never seen what MJF's like. Does he want to go to WWE as much as he has said on TV he does? Or is that part of the character? Someone like him who knows he's the best in the world, of course, would want the most money and would play off that. Of course, he probably wants to. But what we're seeing on TV, and by extension, somewhat what we're seeing in the dirt sheets, we don't know.
Sure.
Him and Tony might have all this worked out. Some incredibly. MJF may be very likable, respected backstage. He just protects his character, so we never see it. Him and Tony, we know we don't know exactly his pay scale right now, but we don't have any reason to necessarily know if it's being a very genial contract negotiation. We've never seen behind the curtain of MJF. So he may know, like a lot of wrestlers who are top talents right now in the promotions, that they would have interest. Like anything else, there's probably been some overtures which could be probably considered tampering down the road if need be, but he's got some sort of representation. He knows what's going on. He may be incredibly happy with his contract, and this is just as good a character story as there is. He also has the ability, like I said, I think last week, to turn this around and become a monster face too. There was some cheering in that crowd. He works that right. You know, Stone Cold started kind of heelish and became the Mesozoic character. So he is capable,
I think,
of doing this, of going in any direction right now. Because
I think the interesting thing is, though, in order for like a heel of this magnitude to become a face, you just have to have a bigger heel, right? So Stone Cold was a heel, but Vince became a bigger heel. So
well,
Stone
I
Cold,
hope TK does not
it's
start that.
TK doesn't have it.
And this ties into my big concern about this, because the contract stuff, I do think MJF legitimately is upset with his contract. I mean, I think that precipitated everything we saw at the beginning of the weekend. But the contract stuff doesn't worry me as much, because you still have over a year to figure it out. Maybe you will, maybe you won't, but you have time. The thing I worry about is the part that you guys just talked about, which is when CM Punk did his thing and that character evolved, you had a ready-made opponent and a counterpart, an adversary who was his opposite number. With MJF, you're absolutely right. Like, he's getting cheers now, which makes total sense, because that structurally, the story they're now telling would be one designed to get him cheers, whether they like it or not. But I don't know that there's a counterpoint to him that they can now pair him with that will advance the storyline. So to the point you made earlier, it's like, gosh, are they just going to have him come out every week like solo and cut these kinds of promos? Like, that'll work for a couple of weeks, but you got to do something with it. The most logical thing to do, which for the reasons you all just stated and we talked about earlier, you cannot do, would be to pit him directly against Tony Khan, and or Tony Khan's handpicked, guy. But how would that work, especially if he's evolving into being like a surly face? So that's my concern, is like, have they planned, and to go back to what you were saying earlier, Elliot, like, this ties into like my bigger concerns about Tony Khan and about kind of how he's like, there are lots of good wrestlers on the AEW roster. There's lots of great wrestling on their shows. I think in isolation, their shows are great, but the big picture stuff, accepting whatever's going on with the world title, probably Jade Cargill and the EVPs, I just feel like it's very like short attention span, jumping from one thing to the next, and that's where I worry about, like, is he gonna have the chops to be able to delicately book something that potentially could be the biggest thing the company's ever done, in a way that's really going to work.
And I don't want to belabor the point, but that's my, like, this whole Forbidden Door setup to me. Just feel it. The best thing we can hope for from Forbidden Door is that it's one night of great crossover wrestling, and then you just move on.
I think that's kind of how it's been advertised a little bit.
That's the way it's been built for now, because they don't have any dedicated stories and they had these weird, New Japan run-ins. They had one not this particular week, but last week on Dynamite, and we're just like, all right, they're gonna build to something. And it's like, no, it's just like, we just hope now that Punk and Tanahashi, right, has a great match, and that's the only thing we can hope for, and then they move on to what the real AEW storyline is. It seems to me, and this is one thing that I feel like AEW does a lot, is like, hey, we got a really great idea, let's do it, but we just have no like idea how to storytell or follow around it. You know what I mean?
The only guy to me where this can all kind of fit together would be if you do a complete reversal of what happened 11 years ago after Forbidden Door in Chicago. Punk becomes the biggest heel in the company, and he goes up against MJF, and then you can draw upon all of the history with Punk and this role reversal, and now he's the champ, and there's all this stuff.
Didn't they already do this to an extent? Punk comes out on the big pay-per-view with the Ring of Honor gear. Isn't he fighting MJF in the whole, what was it, the dog collar match?
Yeah, well, they've had a feud already. Yeah.
But MJF was in full-on heel mode. He didn't have the added element of all the shoot stuff that happened, or work shoot stuff. So I'm saying, you give it a month to get through kind of the New Japan stuff after Forbidden Door. And here's the reason I say it is because Punk is such a high-level performer that I would trust him to make this work. And as we've all talked about, he's a very good face, but he's a better heel. And if there's anybody, to your point, Cheatham, who could be that sort of even
Right.
more of a heel, like that's Punk. Plus, then you can also draw in elements of like Hangman Page is like, I told, this is what I was talking about.
Right.
I told you that this is who this guy was. Eddie Kingston, I told you this is who this guy was. And you can kind of build around that. So other than that, I hope it, look, and I'll just say this. There are also very many creative ideas that don't even occur to my brain that I hope that they could do. But that's my fear, is that unless they come up with something really, really good, that this thing that has so much potential but is high risk just goes poof.
Quickly, Elliot, where do you see this thing shaking out?
I think this is going to okay, I'm going to make a prediction on the spot. I think Punk goes super heel in Chicago, turns the tables on everybody, blames them for whatever he does. And over the course of time, he starts a feud with Tony, and it ends up with Tony having to reach out to MJF at some point in the fall to help slay the Dragon Punk. And we revisit it then. I don't know exactly how you get to A to B. And again, I'm not even thinking about the 2024 contract because that is over a year away. You can roll this back 2 more times before then. I think at some point TK because I think it's inevitable unless he has really good handlers who he doesn't seem to have. He's gonna end up coming out at some point and want to get beaten up. I'm not sure he wants to go out to the ring and cut a promo. He wants to get beaten up by somebody on TV. He wants to juice himself and bleed. Because this is all a big fantasy that he's playing out. So
he's a mark. He is a mark.
Yeah,
that's true.
And
very little. And so are all of us. And that's because we're talking about it on a podcast. But because if all of us had TK's money, we'd all be doing some variation of this too. And we all think we could do it as good, if not better. And TK's he didn't have any sort of history in writing or production.
No, he's a fan.
He's a fan.
Yeah,
so this is kind of like skiing with dynamite. It is high risk, high reward. So you don't really know how it's going to shake out. But I think it's going to end up. I think we will see a TK MJF partnership at some point down the road to take on another heel that they've created, maybe CM Punk.
So I'll just leave it with this part is, if Double or Nothing taught me anything, it's everything that I thought I was predicting did not happen or wasn't going to happen or wasn't even close to happening. So this whole idea, like, it seems like we're all like, yeah, Punk's definitely going to turn heel. And he's going to, probably not. He'll probably just be like, I enjoy wrestling so much. I'm going to do this for the next year.
This is what makes wrestling great. Yes, it's much more likely that Blackpool Combat Club goes heel than Punk.
I'm going to be wrong because I've been wrong about everything. All right, so let's go into... Quickly, let's just go down to our thoughts on the entire Double or Nothing card. Let's do this. I'm going to do it in reverse order because I think we'll probably have more to talk about in the second half of the very, very, very long 5-hour plus pay-per-view.
Pretty sure it just ended like an hour and a half ago.
AEW
This is actually the post show for that.
They have to do something about that. It's just too long.
Little unique because of basketball. Tony had.
No, it's just too long. No, it started at 7 with the buy-in show.
5 hours plus. It was like WrestleMania.
Insane. It's insanely long.
What's the right time frame for a pay-per-view?
Less.
That's perfect.
I would say between 2.5 and 3 hours for a regular pay-per-view, and then I will give you like whatever your super card of the year or 2 shows. I'll give you 4, less, like under 4. Anything beyond that is just it's nuts. It's
too much. All right, gentlemen, let's go through this in reverse order. CM Punk defeated Hangman Page by pinfall. He is now the AEW champion. Did we all call Punk? I'm trying to think. Who called Punk?
I did. I was Summer of Punk.
I thought Hangman was going to retain. But I did not think Punk would turn heel in this match.
What are our thoughts on the actual match? Because at this point, my eyes were bloodshot red. It was running on fumes. But I thought it was very entertaining. I think they entertained me quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm always impressed about I am not a Hangman Page guy. I've said this on the show over and over again, but he does, and he works great matches. I was actually impressed with the things he can do in the ring. I think he tells a good story. So and Punk, I haven't been overly impressed with on his comeback about his in-ring work. This was actually, I thought it was a good match.
Yeah, it was a good match because he was banged up last night and didn't put on his best match he's capable of doing. So he's obviously kind of. It was exciting. It was fun. It was back and forth. Those two guys never go out there and don't leave everything in the ring. So it entertained the hell out of me. I thought the ending was appropriate. I think it was time to crown Punk. When he came in August, you knew he was going to be a champion, but credit to, I guess it's Tony and probably Punk too. He didn't have it by Christmas. You know, you could have given it to him at that Christmas show. He went an entire cycle of pay-per-views and he fought people on TV. He fought people at the pay-per-views. He, by all you would measure, earned that title shot and came out clean. He is him and Kenny Omega are your top stars. Punk's your top star by default right now. So it was the right time, right circumstance. I thought it went out great. I give it an A-.
Pretty good match. I think two thoughts sort of just beyond what Ellie just talked about. One is I think Punk needs to take the top rope stuff out of the rotation at this point. And Wednesday night just cemented that. I mean, he got a little dicey there. Otherwise, fine. I think, good solid match. I liked the storytelling nuance of, Paige struggling, like, do I do this evil thing? And then he decided not to. I thought that was a neat little wrinkle.
That was the end. It was going to hit him with the belt.
Correct. He was contemplating hitting with the belt when the ref was down, and ultimately decided not to do it. And that leaves open the possibility of where that character goes. Final thought on this, I will say, at the time when they were first building Adam Page to be, a guy who down the road was going to be a world champion, the roster looked a lot different. And I think that Adam Page is a guy, I don't want to say he's going to get lost in the shuffle now, but because of the people that the influx of established stars or WWE guys or however you want to describe it, who have come into the company, I do think it's likely going to be a while before he is in the world title picture again.
Well, he's going to need to cut this. This AEW is faction heavy, and I think they're going to continue to be. So he'll need some friends, and whether I don't think he'll join back up with Dark Order. They may try to throw him in to the Bullet Club storyline when Kenny comes back and probably feuds with Adam Cole. He'll need, everyone is going to need some sort of faction with the trios title coming out soon. There's going to be, and I will reserve judgment with whether I'll feel at some point, hey, you need more singles matches, or you'll need, because I think it's going to get pretty tag team and trio heavy later in 2022. So good problem to have. You have a lot of talent, and Adam Page is hella talented. Not in your elite level though right now because of all the talent you signed. Yeah. So he'll be going after the TNT title in that Miro, Wardlow, everybody mix soon enough.
I think you bring a good point about we were talking a lot about where Punk goes from here. I have no clue where Adam Page goes from here, and it doesn't look good in regards to, if it does, it'll be extended way too long, and it'll start to feel like Drew McIntyre, and we'll be like, get him out of there. Like,
your favorite.
Like this has been too long. Let's go into the match that at the time when this match came out, the pay-per-view was so long I forgot it was even on the card, and that was the Tag Team Championship 3-way match: Jurassic Express, Keith Lee, Swerve Strickland versus Team Taz, Powerhouse Hobbs, Ricky Starks. Actually, a flat-out amazing match.
Yeah.
At the point it came out, I was like, crap, there's another one? Like, what is happening? I called Swerve and Lee before the match at the last podcast, and I was emphatically upset when they did not win.
Yeah, credit to Elliot. He called it. I
did it very almost tongue in cheek as just to be contrarian because I did not think the Jurassic Express was going to retain because their reign had been fine, and it would have been perfect to change it up. I don't know why it was done. We'll never find out why it was done because we're not privy to these information. But I would have rather seen Swerve and Lee get those belts as well.
I'd have rather seen anything than what Swerve did on Dynamite afterwards, which was just like, let me announce my friend. It was the dumbest.
I didn't like that at all.
It was idiotic. It was idiotic.
Weird. I didn't.
And like, why is Lee even standing there? It was ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
However, I thought
I sort of either didn't have it on in the background. Did he just accept a jacket from that guy? And
it was ridiculous.
And that was it? Okay. Yeah, that's not.
It's not going to dignify it with.
But they worked so well together.
Yeah.
It was at a time where the crowd should have been dead. They kept them alive, kept them up, did some great work in the ring. And a credit to Starks and Hobbs. I've come full circle around on those guys. They are amazing. And I thought they should have changed the titles. I don't know why they didn't. Great match, but I did not like the finish.
Two quick thoughts from a work standpoint. That might have been my favorite match of the night.
It was a great match
in terms of in-ring work. The second thought was one of the reasons why I was so surprised and sort of thinking about this card in hindsight was Jurassic Express to me are sort of analogous in some ways to like Hangman Page. It's like, yes, they were over, people were into them. And now that the roster has been beefed up a bit, it does seem more like you got Swerve and Keith Lee there. You know, that seems like a more logical.
Put the belts on him.
Right. So anyway.
Otherwise, make Lee a single star, which I'd prefer him being.
And Elliot, after the match, the only kind of rationalization I could come up with for why they didn't take the titles off of them was because the other four guys in the match, they all see as single stars, and they didn't want to, lock them into a tag team.
I think Luchasaurus can be a single star. He just has the size and the capability. And same with Jungle Boy, who he is really over. I think he will be, in that cruiserweight division with Sammy and Darby. He could have some great runs with them. He's considered a pillar.
With all the titles they have, it's weird they don't have a cruiserweight or light heavyweight title.
I'm sure it's coming.
Mm-hmm. Tony TK said a few weeks ago he has dozens of belts at home that no one's ever seen. All right, it's because you're the biggest mark I've ever seen. Because I have lots of belts too at home, but
Let's talk about what I actually thought was really entertaining. I guess they ultimately called it Anarchy in the Arena.
Yeah.
This is Jericho Appreciation Society. They actually defeated the Blackpool Combat Club, Eddie Kingston, Santana, and Ortiz. So much action. The cameras we talked about being at Capitol Collision and seeing so many people and trying to figure out what to watch. This was so much action. The cameras couldn't keep up. There's blood everywhere. I thought for what it was, I thought it was really well done. Yeah. I also thought this is if there was something that was like, this is a bit too much. These Anarchy Arena Stadium Stampede matches where there was one, not this one, but there's one where really Matt Hardy I really thought died. With the Sammy spot. And now this one, I think somebody in the chat was like, I really think the one guy at 2.0 nicked an artery. Because
I said that. I really thought, I thought he did. Mm-hmm. He went from not bleeding to just the full Crimson Mask. I was like, oh man, that looks like
something is going wrong.
Yeah.
Some wrestlers don't know how to blade themselves.
And then
also, I like that Mark. I like the fact that, like me, you cannot remember that dude's name to save your life.
I don't remember anybody in 2.0 at all. But the Kingston Death March with the gasoline,
perfect showcase for Eddie.
Oh my god,
he's so good. He is a horror movie character.
Yeah. It was awesome. That image will be GIFs, memes, photos of what Eddie Kingston is for the rest of his life. Mm-hmm. And then, Bryan Danielson knocking the Flame out. I thought it was really, really well done. But it was really Anarchy in the Arena. I thought it was well done. Clearly, again, I think the wrong team won. But guys, what do you think?
I think they're going to run it back in an even more violent match, as was announced last night at Blood and Guts, which is going to be contained in a ring, 2 rings, unlike this one. So they're going the full circle with this huge feud. It's so much you have to do these because you can't have 10-man tag team matches when you have this much going on. Those don't work. So you got to have some of these gimmick matches, and the arena matches, and especially what Blood and Guts which will be the blow off. This feud is purely about, Jericho's wizard gimmick versus Eddie Kingston's serial killer gimmick, and it works for me. Blood and Guts is going to be great. That match was great. Those are Jericho and his guys, and Mox, Danielson, Santana, Ortiz, those guys too. They all know how to tell great dark stories. So you have some of the best, doing it out there together.
This is the best AEW work Santana Ortiz has done too. So this actually elevates them. I can't say the same for 2.0. It's supposed to, but we still don't know who those guys are. We really don't.
I don't know their names. I know one of them's Angelo something.
Right. It doesn't.
The other one I can't remember.
Doesn't matter.
I don't think it helped Hager as much, but like the whole Kingston, Santana Ortiz, Blackpool thing, it makes them complete badasses. And
wait till those guys go after House of Black. That's gonna be next or down the road, and that'll be fantastic also.
Yeah, I think for me, as I said, I thought from a in-ring work standpoint, I thought the tag team 3-way was probably my favorite match. Although there were so many matches, I may be forgetting one that I like.
We will. We're gonna go faster than the second half of the card.
But I think from just a pure entertainment standpoint, I think this match probably was the top. I mean, there were moments where I was like, not to sound like an old man, but I was like, this is probably going a little too far here. But
no,
overall,
I completely agree with you.
Yeah,
I completely was like,
but like that's there have been like 5 Moxley matches where I felt that way since he's been in AEW.
All of the Moxley matches. I'm like, guys, can you just stop? Can you have one Moxley match where it's not like a GCW? Like Moxley was stuck in barbed wire. That really did not look like he was getting out. Now, like I don't know if they were super comfortable, like super cautious getting him out. Like we don't want to hurt him, or it was like, hey, don't touch me. For like a really long time, he ended the match in that barbed wire.
Yeah, but wildly entertaining. So
yes,
and I will say, last thought, both with the tag team match and this Anarchy in the arena match, the pay-per-view was way too long, but they did a smart thing in how they ordered them because there was no other. If that match had not been where it was in the card, the crowd would have been dead because at that point you're an hour, 5 of the pay-per-view. So smart to order it that way.
Speaking of dead crowd, and I'm glad that this is the one time I'm glad that Megan is not here because Thunder Rosa, Serena Deeb, Thunder Rosa retains. She is still the champion. It did look from the watching standpoint of this match, which it was a fine match. But
that's
from
exactly right. Fine match.
From watching standpoint of this match, it looked like that was where the crowd was like, all right, let's just take a break.
They really do her no favors. I mean, they put her in situations where, and look, I'm not as high on her as Megan is, obviously, but it just seems like whether it's promos during the week or on pay-per-views, like where she is just they're not giving it the right build or spotlight depending on the circumstances.
Yep, and I don't know whether that's the result of a lack of confidence or a lack of just overall emphasis, or she's a placeholder, which is probably a little bit of everything. But she probably deserves a little bit more, but the match was just fine. Let's move on.
Move on. Thunder Rosa retains.
Mm-hmm.
A match that I didn't think I needed. It was again another fine match, but I didn't think I needed it. And given the length of the event, I definitely didn't need it.
I already know what match you're going to talk about. Go ahead.
Kyle O'Reilly, Darby Allin. Kyle O'Reilly defeats Darby Allin in just a random singles match. Just
like both guys, good wrestlers. The pay-per-view 6 hours long. Why is this on the card?
Because at some point you realized, we don't have Darby who has.
It should have been a Dynamite match. Should have been a Rampage match.
Yeah, they need. Darby's a pillar. You need Darby on every card. I don't think it was placed very well or needed, but you couldn't have not had Darby somewhere on there. So a fine match, 2 great athletes. I enjoyed it. It would have been great. It could have been a great opening bout on a 7-match pay-per-view.
I think it would have been a great main event for a Dynamite or
Or,
Rampage.
yeah.
I didn't need it on this.
Yeah, they'll run that back on Dynamite plenty.
Okay. Hey, surprise of the night for me, America Top Team, and the surprise is Paige Van Sant can actually wrestle. Ethan Page, Scorpio Sky, Paige defeated Frankie, Sammy, and Ty Conte. Ty Conte followed up her Mexico AAA appearance where she also took a super kick to the face. She took another one. And at this point, the Ty Conte character I dislike so much that I'm glad she takes super kicks to the face. But I thought Paige, they built this thing around Paige can do wrestling moves for people like us that were extremely worried about her possibly hurting someone.
I'm still worried.
But she did some drop toe holds. She did some slams. She did way more work in the ring in this match than I ever thought she would.
Yeah, they trusted her just enough to do some of those moves. She had posted videos in the week prior of her doing the toe hold and the slam. So I think she got 3 or 4 moves down, and because she is a athlete, she's able to pull those off. I think they used her to the extent she had in her, and that's fine. I wouldn't want her doing much more. I like the Ty character and the Sammy character a little bit more than you guys.
Yeah,
I don't love it.
I like them as long as they understand that they are super heels.
Yeah, that has backfired on them sort of inadvertently, but they're making chicken salad out of it. So, I like them. I like Sammy's vlog just fine. So they've got it. They're 2 in a good spot right now, and I think Ty's just fine taking those super kicks because she wants to be on TV and she thinks she deserves it, and she does deserve it. So they're both very attractive people, so it works.
Let's do these together because there's no reason to separate them. The couple here, Dr. Brett Baker, DMD, Adam Cole, they both took the Owen Hart finals, defeating Samoa Joe and defeating Ruby Soho. My only real gripe with this is I wanted Ruby Soho to get a win. Not like the win of this match, but just feel like her time in AEW is worth something. She's debuted in, it was a big deal. I don't think she's carried a title. She's not she's not gotten over on any of these things. There's no reason in regards to long-term storytelling where you give Brett Baker another honor, right? She's got this honor, it's great. She didn't need it. Ruby would have really cherished it in that sense. Really surprised about the Cole Samoa Joe match, and I was surprised that it went clean. It was just a clean match.
That's what surprised me. The outcome didn't surprise me. I was surprised.
Yeah, and after you kind of saw the tea leaves of them wearing Owen Hart gear and them both being together, and then a joint ceremony. You know what I mean? It's like you're gonna have Adam and Ruby stand up there. But gentlemen, what did you think of the actual Cup finals and overall Cup?
I thought that the Joe and Cole are great, and it's such a clash of types. I really enjoyed that. I think these 2 matches, this is an example. I mean, AEW does so many for lack of a better word, themed TV shows. You could have taken these 2 matches, built an entire episode of Rampage or even Dynamite around it, and have it be Owen Hart's widow there, just as they did, and have the whole show be built around these 2 matches, the ceremony, etc. It didn't need to be on this card, and with it that long. So that was my big thing with that. I think it was kind of a given once, as you just said, Cheatham, that you kind of connected the dots that, it's going to be a couple's, sort of, they're wearing matching gear, blah, blah, blah. I'm fine with it. I agree. The last thought is, regarding Ruby Soho, I thought it was kind of interesting, weird maybe, that her pre-match promo was built around this idea of I've been the performer who can get close but can't win the big one. She didn't use that phrase. And then the same thing happening. And so I was like, okay, is that your character now? Because that kind of sucks for you.
Absolutely.
They did give her the pin yesterday over Britt. So
yeah, that's true.
But
I
yeah,
mean,
doesn't matter.
they'll ultimately get there with her, but it's just taking way too long for me. Like she should get at least some wins, right?
I agree.
Very entertaining match here. House of Black. Those guys can do no wrong for me. Death Triangle.
Great.
By far my favorite. Ray Phoenix is my favorite wrestler in the company. Could be my favorite wrestler of all time right now. Like
Of all time?
No,
Wow.
no. Like right now. He could be
today.
who's my favorite wrestler right now that I like to see in the ring. It's Ray Phoenix. I would stop what I'm doing for a Ray Phoenix match. And I thought these guys were phenomenal. They finally got the long payoff with Julia Hart. I thought that was great. She looks phenomenal in her House of Black gear. She's already posting stuff on social afterwards. Really well done. I just love Buddy Murphy's amazing. Brody Lee's amazing. Malachi's amazing. I don't just those guys steal the show to me. Any card they're on, they're phenomenal, and that's kind of why I like the Lucha Brothers so much. I think they steal shows all the time, and so I just loved it. But
A lot of people have compared House of Black to the Brood, to the Ministry of Darkness, to Judgment Day, currently in WWE. No, they're none of those. They're the House of Black. They're original. We haven't seen something quite like that. I mean, and yeah, it's working for me too. Those guys are dark, mysterious, and a faction. It feels like what the Wyatt family should have been, which was far more dominant for far longer. I'm not comparing them to them either. I guess I am. But yeah, like your cheats, it's all working for me. Those guys are all just vicious and big and mean. And Julia Hart brings an element into it. They may not even be done adding members. I would like to see this faction absorb, the forgotten children, the lost souls, like sort of like a la Julia Hart. It works. Yeah, it was a great match too.
I agree with all that. I think I really like what they're doing with House of Black, and I think that there's big things for them to come as well.
Excellent. All right, Jade Cargill defeated Anna Jay. Big surprise there. Cargill Street continues. Big storyline of this match is what happened during and after the match, which was we mentioned Stokely Hathaway walks out, and we're like, oh, he's here. Which one thing I did think about was, I guess managers don't have the longer non-competes because he literally was just on NXT. It wasn't 30 or 90 days or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the. First of all, it depends on some times when they are given the release. It can be a non-conditional release, and you're free to do whatever you want. I don't know enough about his particular situation to know if that was it. But there's sometimes this would happen with Adam Cole, where they just make a mistake in the contract and the non-compete is not the full 90. And so Adam Cole showed up
and there's also some instances where they have a 90-day, and if the talent has requested an early release, WWE has granted that on occasion.
Right.
But again, don't know what happened exactly.
Yeah, Stokely showed up. I loved it. Didn't expect to see him. That was awesome. And then Athena shows up. Cargill did fine. Anna Jay, no one thought she was going to win that match. I did like the Jaded from the second rope or the top, like the finisher. I thought was pretty cool for Jade. Just keeps showing that she's still working on her craft, right? But Athena coming out, and so you're building up Athena, Statlander, Anna Jay versus the baddies, who I do love. I love they figured out something to do with Hogan and Red Velvet. And now you've got Stokely. I would get Smart Mark out of there. And I
think he is out of there. After
I do
Sunday.
enjoy Jade. Like I enjoy the more she comes out, cocky, cut the shit, Tony. I'm digging it. I love what they're doing with her. I don't know. Athena might be the person that takes her down. I don't know. We'll see.
If she does, that just would put Cargill into the main event title.
She would immediately be the women's champion, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the question is, I don't know if they want to do that. So they might just keep running this TBS thing out.
Could.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I thought it was overbooked. I think with Jade Cargill, she's such a star. You don't need to cram all 3 run-ins and 2 debuts into that 10-minute block on the pay-per-view. I think there's probably better ways to do that, but I mean, the outcome was the right one, and she'll continue to be undefeated for the foreseeable future. I think other than losing the title at some point to get her into the women's world title, I don't think she'll lose a match for a year plus.
Here's the thing. I agree with you 100%, Tom, and I agreed with you at the time. This was the 4th match of the card. So I'm thinking a traditional AEW pay-per-view where there's a lot of surprises. And I'm thinking, Forbidden Door surprises. We're thinking run-ins, Jay Lethal, all this stuff. Actually, none of that happened. Yeah. This was by far the most chaotic, like, returns, run-ins. And so in totality, I'm like, well, I'm glad they did it now. At the time I'm watching it, I'm like, what is happening? If this is what the night's gonna be, like just people showing up out of anywhere. But no, let's get to a well talked about match for all different types of reasons. The Hardys versus the Bucks. If you're just looking online, you couldn't make heads or tails of it. If you're just looking online, you were like, is Jeff okay? What is happening? Then you hear like, oh, the Bucks are actually like they're starting to work. They actually had a really good match at the end. Like this was a part of the time where I was buffering a lot during the pay-per-view feed, so I couldn't catch the entire I didn't catch the is Jeff Hardy himself type stuff, but that was a lot of stuff happening.
Am I the only dinosaur who actually just orders the pay-per-view on like your cable box? Is it just me?
I didn't know you can do that.
Probably.
I didn't know you could still.
I thought it was a Bleacher Report. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought Bleacher was the only way.
So anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
What's your take on this match? And obviously, Hardy's went over, so it's Hardy's defeated the Young Bucks. But I think everybody that talked about this match made it very clear that the Young Bucks carried the match.
Yeah, Tom, take this one. This was at a moment where I was starting to sort of chase the Twitter what's wrong with Jeff tweets.
I mean, I think it was okay. I think, look, to state the obvious, the Hardys are not what they were, even 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago. And I think what hurt this match a little bit was the Bucks kind of had to slow down a bit to match like the Hardys tempo. It still was a fine match. I didn't watch it. There was no point where I was like, God, is Jeff okay? Like, what's going on?
Okay, because that was the online.
His boot kind of failed on him, right? And that caused...
Yeah.
His boot failed on him, which caused some of his spots to look clunky because he couldn't get the right footing. And I think... But there was other... Because, again, this is when I was not so much... I wasn't watching. I was chasing these, like, what's wrong with Jeff? Yeah. Is Jeff going on?
I was doing that, too.
There was more than one person who... There were some people saying his boot has broken, but more people were just like, he looks glazed over. Is he going to jump into the stands again and walk out? And I never really got to the end of what happened, but there was enough chatter online that he looked off that...
The only thing he did, it's funny you mentioned that, because the only time when he seemed, I mean, look, I've watched 10 hours of wrestling between that match and now, so it's hard to remember everything. But the only time when I was sort of like, sort of surprised or gave a second thought to his behavior was actually before the match. The way that he was like interacting with fans, I was like, that seems a little weird. But then once the match started, I thought it was it's very possible I could have missed stuff, and I wasn't watching Twitter, so I was there. If there was stuff that they were really honing in on that I was just kind of oblivious to, that's also possible.
Here's also the blessing and the curse of being Jeff Hardy at this point. You're over. You're always over. You're going to be a fan favorite forever. But if anything in your match goes weird, it's going to be, is Jeff okay? Is he? If it's not obviously the worst of scenarios that you're thinking, is he impaired some way? It's the other things. Is he concussioned? Is he, you know what I mean? Jeff, at this point in his life, could take a standard bump and may not, may jar something that, from years of taking bumps, that could be bad for the rest.
And that's the whole thing that I'm thinking about with the Ric Flair match that I won't get or watch. Sure. But I'm just like, God, watching that match would be tough. Even if everything goes fine, watching the match would be really tough, because every time he takes a bump or something happens, I'll be like, is he going to get up? Is he okay?
Yeah, I likened it at the time to watching Alex Smith play quarterback for that.
Oh, exactly right.
Yeah.
So
I don't think Jeff Hardy... Yeah, it's cringy every time. And
anytime he took a hit, I was like, God, please let his leg not just snap in half.
And I'm not exactly there with the Hardys, but it's very clear to me that, Jeff is not what he used to be. You said 10 years. I'm probably thinking 5, right?
Yeah.
But he's so over, and he's so he can do no wrong in the eyes of true wrestling fans. So I mean, I just think it's going to be an interesting thing. All right, we've already heavily went on Wardlow and MJF. Do we want to talk quickly about Hookhausen defeating Tony Nese and Smart Mark? Did you find that fun? Did you find it entertaining?
I
found it fun and entertaining, and the world saw that Danhausen can actually wrestle.
Right.
He won't just be a character.
Time.
Yeah, pretty much first time. He can. What he does as a wrestler, we'll see. I want this Hookhausen gimmick to go a little bit longer, but I think they're just sort of waiting for the right place to put Hook in a real storyline. This is a fun placeholder that's getting him over. He's working that character. He's building that character himself, mostly just by sitting there and glaring at the camera, which works. He is going to, I hope, be a star. And Danhausen is extremely over. So it's a perfect combination for fun and entertainment. And until you get something real for Hook, and then Danhausen can start the next semi-funny, semi-serious storyline.
Yeah, I mean, for me, as somebody who likes Danhausen a lot, I'm still always a little surprised at how big of a reaction he gets from the crowd. So, I mean, as long as that keeps happening, I'm all for him being very involved in something that's happening on TV. The biggest question I have coming out of it is, like, Danhausen, he has a really specific and unique character. He's going to be fine. He's going to have his fans. Hook is a star in the making. He's going to be fine. He has his hands. The biggest question I have is, what do they want to do with Tony Nese? Like, do they want him to be in like comedy feuds? Do they want him to be somebody who's taken more seriously? And I'm not sure they know yet.
It's not clear to me. And I think that there's too much talent that he's going to get. There's a lot
that's
of
the thing.
Yeah,
that's a big problem.
He is. I mean, he's lower priority than everyone else that was in that match that day, and it takes nothing away from him. It's just the product of having a big, talented roster.
But I really do like Smart Mark. So if they can keep them together and figure something, I like Smart Mark Sterling. I do
too. I like that he served. He served Wardlow with a class action lawsuit on behalf of the arena security guys. That was good.
I really think I think he's talented. I think he's around. I think he's fun. Gentlemen, we are over an hour and 12. We don't want this to be a Double or Nothing pay-per-view, but we do want to talk quickly about what's going to happen or what we think is going to happen with WWE Hell in the Cell predictions. Let's just start at the top. We'll go as fast as we can.
Yeah.
Hell in the Cell match, Cody versus Seth. Where are we with this?
Wow. Go, Tom.
Well, here's the thing. Do you really want Seth to get beaten 3 times in a row by the same guy? I mean, they're pushing Cody to the moon, and I'm not saying that's wrong. He's super over. But do you really want Seth Rollins, who is one of your top guys, to keep getting beaten by the same dude? I think something's going to happen, as it typically does, in this Hell in a Cell match, and it will either have I think there will be some kind of, I don't know if it'll be interference, but some kind of controversial finish. And I think Seth somehow wins, but Cody still looks strong. I just don't think he beats Seth 3 in a row. I just think that's a mistake.
Yep. I think this will not have a finish because there'll be some interference, something will happen. And the way you do that in the Hell in a Cell is you have someone appear. So
the Fiend, perhaps?
it's been teased a little bit by Wyndham himself that he's kind of ready to come back. I don't think it's necessarily going to happen, but if you want to grab some attention away from wrestling fans who are wondering what MJF is doing, Vince has the ability to mend fences quickly and write big checks. And I think Wyndham is the kind of talent, Bray, that he could be successful anywhere, but he was beloved, and let's get him back in the mix. If he's ready, if he's healthy, in a good headspace. Matt Hardy had said Vince loved him like a son at some point, at times, to the point where he even treated him like a son, for better or for worse. So
he did fire his own son as well. So
he did. So I'm going to say you heard it here first. There's going to be the return of Bray Wyatt, Fiend, Wyndham Rotunda.
I would love
to interfere with that match. I would love that. So wishful thinking, dream booking.
Yeah, I think it's not going to happen. I think Cody wins again. I think he wins. I think it'll be a great. I think it'll be a good match.
Yeah, because Seth can lose 3 in a row and not be incredibly damaged, but it wouldn't be the best scenario. But he's capable of bouncing back from that. Not many are, but he is.
I just don't know where the friends. Like, I would love the interference and all. I just don't know where it comes from in this story. Right. So it's not going to be Kevin Owens. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I think they put Cody over again, Hell in a Cell, cleanly, and then you move him to a Roman storyline if Roman wants to take time off, right? Like, something of that like. Because if Roman's going to take time off, they've got to have an A-block person. They've been pushing Cody up there. I don't know if he's ready for it. I don't know if it goes well, but
I think that's a post SummerSlam, because it sounds like his next 3 challengers are lined up for the next 3 pay-per-views with Riddle and Orton and then McIntyre when they go overseas. All cards subject to change, but I bet Cody ends up winning the Royal Rumble. We'll do some long-term.
I forgot about that show in the UK. God, how many pay-per-views do they have?
Exactly.
It's got to be 16. It's anyway.
Raw Women's Championship 3-way, Bianca Belair champion, Becky Lynch, and Asuka.
Bianca retains.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Bianca retains, or Asuka figures it out, but I don't think they put the belt on Becky again right now.
No.
Bobby Lashley versus Almost an MVP in a handicap match.
I mean, I think they set it up as a handicap match to give Bobby Lashley a reason that he can lose. And they seem to, at least for now, want to keep pushing Amaz and just see if there's anything there. So I think they win.
When you have a 7-foot guy in a Hell in a Cell, it always lends the possibility of a really interesting spot,
Well, they're not in a cell, right?
No, I don't.
This isn't Hell in a Cell? Oh.
The only cell match is Seth and Cody.
Yeah.
Exactly. That was our point.
Okay, huh.
I could go either way on this. What's
AKA you don't care.
It doesn't,
my
particularly
point
intrigue me.
My point is, how does this end? And it's gonna end somehow with Bobby going over, right? And then moving. So if they want it to end now, which they probably don't, they probably want this to continue on for a bit. Bobby probably figures out a way to lose again, and he probably tries to figure out how to isolate them both. You know what I mean? As the storyline goes through. But again, not as I was super into it when it first started and MVP turned on Bobby. I thought that was really interesting. A lot of things like WWE at this point, I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, again, you know what I mean? Again, TG's favorite match of the night, Kevin Owens versus Ezekiel. Thoughts?
Story. They're probably not going to be my favorite match of the night, but yeah, I think I'll be entertained for sure. There will be a lot of BS around the match. In terms of in-ring, it'll be so. I love Kevin Owens.
I think Ezekiel's not bad.
He's okay. He's okay. I think they're going to put Ezekiel over just from the standpoint of he's new. I
and he's over. He's actually over.
Mm-hmm. He's over with Kevin's help.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kevin makes him over in my mind.
Right. I think the question is going to be, however you resolve this story. If you take him away from like the Owens again counterpoint, is there anything there? I mean, as Elias, there was something there because he had the gimmick and all that. I mean, what does Ezekiel have other than like lying and saying he's not alive? Anyway, I don't know. We'll see. I think he wins though.
For the record, too, I think was it a SmackDown segment with Kevin and Sami Zayn, just gold, just hilarious.
Gold.
I forgot about that. That should have been what I was popping for this week. That was amazing. Kevin Owens is phenomenal.
Those two can do that in their sleep. They've done it for so many years that I bet there are almost no scripts with those two. There probably is, but like they have earned the trust to say
they're fantastic. They're great. I love both those guys.
That was really, really good. I didn't know. Forgive me, and I really didn't know this. I think I texted to the group. Mustafa Ali is back.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's in the U.S. title picture. He's taking on Austin Theory. But that was really accurate. Speaking of people that came back, Mustafa Ali was really bad for a while when he demanded his release and then was like.
Well, he answered Theory's like open challenge the first Monday Night Raw after he won the belt to sort of bring him back. He was defeated that night in the main event. I think he was sort of.
Did they do a thing where like they pretended like it was going to be him versus Theory, but then like Veer Mahan maybe he had to wrestle?
Is that what it was? Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah,
they did it last week, and it was I think he wrestled a match, and then to get the opportunity, the title opportunity, and then it was like, okay, but you have to wrestle right now, and then he of course lost, and then Adam Pearce came out and was like, Vince McMahon wants to see you take him on in a fair fight. I'm like, why? That doesn't make any sense. Anyway.
I saw that. I'm a fan of Ali, and you know who actually is a really fan of Ali is Paul Heyman. And
definitely.
It was interesting Paul Heyman went on, I think it was Ariel Helwani's show, and was like, Mustafa Ali's a star. Like and it was kind of out of character for him to kind of rant on how great Mustafa Ali was.
Yeah.
And then, he obviously feels underappreciated and he's in some dumb storylines and dumb creative. And he was like, I want out of here because he's seeing people that kind of look like him build wise. Because there's still this whole WWE big man complex, right? Like Vince loves the big guys.
Yeah.
And
I meant to mention before, to your point, way back at the beginning of the show, when you were talking about like MJF could get to the end of his contract and like WWE maybe not as high on him. The thought that came through my mind is like, they're going to be like, oh wait, he's 5'9".
Yeah. He's Austin Theory. Austin Theory is probably bigger than MJF.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
And Austin Theory doesn't look like a big guy compared to Drew and Bobby and Big E.
That's the thing that's so funny is quick tangent. I know we're over time here, but like when Cody was in WWE the first time, he looked like, that was what always struck me, was like he looked like a smaller guy. Now, if you saw him at your gym, you'd be like, man, that guy's jacked. And when he was in AEW, he was a little bit more, he looked a little bit, relatively bigger. And that's one thing about WWE. They love the larger than life dudes. And the byproduct of that is a guy like Ali, to bring it back to him. Again, if you saw that guy in your gym, you'd be like, oh, he's pretty built. But on WWE TV, he looks like a really small guy in relative terms.
Absolutely.
And Vince is not going to be able to get past that, I think.
So I do think he goes over Theory. I think we figured.
I don't think he wins the title, though. Do you? Do you think he wins the title?
I don't think so.
I think he goes over.
I think Theory retains.
Yeah, it's probably a DQ finish or something, but I don't think he's going to lose the title yet.
Last thing on this card that we have scheduled and probably potential to steal the night: Finn Balor, AJ Styles, Liv versus Judgment.
This is what I was talking about popping for, that there's a quasi Bullet Club storyline in here. I think AJ, Finn, Liz Morgan's a good third person to add to that group. She's a mark. She'll be the first one to admit that. So I bet she loves being in there with two really fantastic wrestlers. I would rather see AJ and Finn fight each other just like to the end of time because they're both so good. But that's a good threesome to take on Judgment Day. I think ultimately Judgment Day will go over.
Yeah.
And who knows? We may see Liv. I can see Liv Morgan being influenced to join Judgment Day. Anything could happen. Whether this turns into an AJ Finn thing, who knows? But it has me a little bit intrigued because I really like Finn Balor. I wish he was actually some other places right now, but he really likes being where he is. So I support him. I support Finn. I'm happy for him. I love making just predictions pulling them straight out of my backside. Bailey returns and joins Judgment Day.
Interesting. Very interesting. Along those lines,
I don't know where you get these from.
I told you where I told you where I'm getting them from.
Right. Wyndham and Bailey come back. This is gonna be the greatest.
Oh, that would be it's like
this is gonna be the greatest Hell in the Cell.
That's what I'm saying. We're talking about this like
we've ever seen.
Like a placeholder.
I think he never admitted it, but I think AEW was about to crack 1 million. Vince is not worried about AEW, but Vince is paying attention. I think his ego, he wants to outdo whatever the rest of his industry is talking about, whether he feels he needs to or not. I think Vince cares more than we know.
I don't know if Vince does. I think definitely the people around him are paying a lot of attention to the numbers AEW is doing. Vince, I feel like, is like an alien. I don't even think he's like a normal person.
Mm-hmm.
As far as this match goes, I hadn't thought of Bailey, but along the same lines, I think you're going to see a new member of Judgment Day, and for the same rationale where I thought that the Jericho Appreciation Society might win the stadium or the Anarchy in the Arena match. If you have a real faction, especially a new faction, going up against a group that is sort of not a faction or has components that aren't a faction, you're pretty much going to put the faction over because you're trying to advance them. So the only thing that I'm thinking about this match is what I'm not sure of is it going to be like somebody returning or showing up, or what I was thinking was sort of along the lines of Bash at the Beach 96 or whatever, somebody from the Liv Morgan team flips. I don't think it'd be AJ Styles because he only fairly recently became a face, and I think they want to put younger people in this Judgment Day other than Edge, obviously.
So you think it's Finn?
Could be Finn or Liv. It'd be a little weird for Liv because she was in a tag team with Rhea and then it broke up, and that would be so it could be Finn.
Finn has the demon character too in the suitcase that
That's right. We haven't seen that in a long time.
Right.
I'm okay with that.
Has anybody? Oh, she doesn't like that. You don't like the 10-minute entrance?
No, it's honestly, I was just like, does anybody else find it weird that he just puts black paint on his face and gets like a wig and then decides that he's a whole different person?
I think it's interesting.
It's a really fantastic paint job. I get it.
I don't think he's trying to emulate a black.
No, person. I'm not, and I'm not saying it's blackface. I'm saying as a black man, I don't necessarily need the demon.
I got you.
Remember when he was before Bray Wyatt got whatever illness he had? He was going to be like Finn was going to be like a pumpkin guy. Remember that?
So ridiculous.
The
best thing that ever happened to Finn was when he went back to NXT.
Has anybody in the last, certainly decade, has anybody ever had their career trajectory altered more by a non-catastrophic injury than Finn Balor did? Because he won the Universal title, injured himself in that match. It wasn't like a career-ending injury or anything crazy, but like he was going to be the guy, and then that's really unfortunate.
There's not a person in the business, in my mind, that is as good as Finn Balor is, that I think is known and kind of carried by this legacy of him being like the meanest leader of the Bullet Club ever. Like the Prince David character follows this, Finn Balor guy around, where it's like, even as great as he is, like I said, Universal Champion, he's great. People are like, oh no, did you see when he was the Prince and he was running Bullet Club? He was just awesome.
It is like, that's weird insane. To me, as somebody who was, I'm not really a New Japan, like I'm aware of it, but yeah, it is weird to see how different his persona was. It's hard to imagine it because in WWE he just hasn't really been presented that way, except a little bit on NXT.
Right, like you do, like any of the countdowns, like greatest leaders of the Bullet Club, and it's like, no, he's number one by far. Like the Prince was just like awesome.
It's still a top 3 NXT moment for me when he came out to help Kenta. When he was introduced as Kenta's partner, he came out. That's how NXT used to premiere their talent, or like flash the name on the score. They just walk out. even when Kevin Owens debuted, there was the Finn pop got me as much as any moment in NXT history because he had that legacy. He was one of like the hottest free agents among those first hot free agents to come to NXT. He's a star. He's one of my top 5 favorites. I think he is always a little underutilized.
Well, yeah, and then they just do stupid stuff like have the rope break when he's about to beat Roman Reigns. So it doesn't make any sense.
Yep.
That is
ridiculous.
We couldn't think of anything else, so I guess we'll do this.
Let's have the top rope collapse. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at an hour 30. We're going to max out our time here.
I blame Tony Khan.
I blame Tony Khan as always. It's been a lot of fun. So much wrestling going on. We didn't even talk about, like we said, some interesting stuff that's happening in New Japan, Impact. We got to figure out what they're going to do with Ring of Honor. Stuff happening. The Indies are a little bit more quiet these days than they were. I think the Indies had an interesting kind of moment where I think AEW was a little bit more loose with their contracts, one.
Yeah. And
all of these wrestlers were kind of figuring out that there was a lot of indie money to be made at the time because, a lot of people weren't traveling to shows. Everybody wasn't on the road. Everybody's back on the road now. I think the indies are taking a little bit of a hit. They had like a really weird moment where it was like everybody was talking about the indies. And that wasn't that long ago. It's probably earlier this year. But now you're not seeing as much indie activity, even to the GCWs of the world. So interesting moments, man. I think a lot of good wrestling happening, and let's end it here with Elliot. Do you have a match for us to watch?
No match to watch, but go watch MJF's promo again, and then go on YouTube and search Roddy Piper Mid-Atlantic, Roddy Piper AWA, and watch some of those promos. Watch some old Ric Flair promos like Mid-Atlantic 1981, his fire when he's screaming at the top of his lungs. I think MJF, has watched those guys and idolized those guys. So recommendation from the collector this week, compare some MJF and Roddy Piper promos on YouTube. And you'll see where MJF is getting that fire, and he's taking it, matching it, and an argument can be made that at the end of the day, he will be among the top heels of all time, like Roddy is.
Agreed.
Awesome. TG, any final thoughts?
I have no final thoughts.
Except follow our show at WCWF Pod.
Make sure you follow the show. I will end with this. My son was I was really into the NBC show Young Rock for season 1, and I think it's a phenomenally done show, really well done. I kind of missed the boat on all of season 2, and to camp now they're on Peacock, and they run for us. We run without commercials, and you can just kind of run them all in season 2. It is a gem of a show. Mm-hmm. It is so good.
I've never seen it.
Oh, Young Rock on NBC or Peacock. It's such a it's a love letter to wrestling fans.
I know that Adam Ray plays Vince McMahon.
It's a love letter to your 80s, early 90s wrestling fan. Mm-hmm. And, now they're introducing, Bam Bam Bigelow and some of these other great characters. It's just phenomenal. And it's really, really well done. And so I will say, if you have time to binge watch things over the weekend, binge watch Young Rock, because it's really, really good. All right. On that note, we will count it out on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. We'll catch you next week, Thursday.
Miss you, Megan.
Miss you, Megs.